Λοιπόν, αγαπητές φίλες, αγαπητοί φίλοι,
Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen,
αγαπητές φίλες, αγαπητοί φίλοι, φτάσαμε τώρα
we
πλέον στο
have
καταληκτικό
reached the final
του
chapter
συνεδρίου,
of our
που
conference,
είναι η συνέβρεση
which is of course
όλων
the
των
get
τριών
together
από
all of
τους
the
moderators
moderators
που συντόνισαν τα
that
πάνελ του
were present at the panels of the last 2 days. And of course, I don't have the experience of the journalists that know how to moderate very well such panels. I would try my best to help get those remarks out for this year's forum. As we already mentioned at the beginning of yesterday's as well as today's introductory speech, we are facing a climate crisis, extreme weather phenomena, overuse of overexploitation of natural resources, pollution of the natural environment, huge increase of the population of the developing country, the decrease of the population in the developed countries, inflation, a lot of geopolitical challenges, different European and national policies, and of course, all of these things, together with what the agricultural industry is creating, an industry of 8 and more billion USD dollars, which of course create a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. If we combine everything together, this poses a lot of challenges to the sustainability of the agri-food systems and the sustainable development. At this point, having heard everything that was said and everything that everyone agreed upon during these 2 days, I'd like to say that we had a very wide agenda with a wide spectrum concerning the climate crisis and the challenges that this crisis is posing. We also discussed issues about sustainable cities, new technologies, innovation, financial instruments, industries, trade, consumers, and many more. On my behalf, I would like to start this last chapter with a question to all moderates that are present in this panel. And based on the title of this year's conference, Quo Vadis, the European and national agriculture, and much more the question, what kind of agriculture do we really want? I would like each one of you to tell me if we managed to respond to this question in these 2 days, concerning, of course, each panel that you moderate. Let me start with Mr. Lianos. Thank you very much for this honor. I feel very bad because yesterday I had to start first. I am aware that always I have to take the lead. What are our conclusions? Well, this depends. What kind of agriculture does one wish for? Where are we? Who are we trying to reach? If we're talking about the Greek society and the Greek environment, we want an agricultural industry that wants a low food cost, a low cost of the product. Of course, we want a healthier product of a high nutritional value with respect to the environment and decrease of the greenhouse gas emissions. We all agree and understand that the old model, the development model that is based upon the increase on the use of the natural resources, thus contributing to the greenhouse gas emissions, is no longer viable. During the last few years, we have all experienced the huge reform from the common agricultural policy. We saw that we were not able to implement this change and those policies. That means that we saw like a fake antithesis. There are not two poles for these questions. We need to do both. We can have a development in this industry, and we can as well protect the environment and the climate. We can introduce innovation through training and investment as well. This is widely accepted in the society. If you ask me at which level the Greek administration is ready, then at the next phase the Greek farmers and producers are ready to accept it and implement it, I will say to you that they are not. On the one hand, because we have specific manpower available, a specific agricultural sector that is not modernized and cannot reach the levels of the rest of the Euros in terms of productivity and innovation. Even younger states, member states that have joined in 2004 the European Union, haven't managed to meet those needs. Well, how can we ask from those states to meet those requirements if older member states haven't even done so? If states that have joined the EU since the 1980s haven't managed to take advantage of all the tools available, the information available, the cross-country cooperations, etc. On the other hand, there is hope. We see the statistical data from a young generation of farmers who have a good educational level, and those people are able to have 3 times the yield that the older farmers have. Well, the bet is whether we will manage to keep them in this profession or not. And finally, I've been witnessing this since 1997 in the different development programs. For example, for the development plots of land. We never managed to finish and implement any project. We were part of many, but we never made it and completed them. Is this only because of one problem in one sector? No, this is a holistic approach. This is a problem from many sectors.
Γεωγραφική διασπορά στον χώρο από πλευράς κατοίκησης, θα έπρεπε να είχαμε κινηθεί πολύ πιο γρήγορα.
We should have moved quicker and based on the geographical data, based on the geography of Greece and the territory and the smaller businesses. I believe we will witness very quickly the changes that will happen, and if we see a decrease in the financial aids, then we will see the need to implement the changes that should have happened 20 years and 30 years ago. Dimitris, you together with Mr. Antoniou, you moderated the third panel that had to do with the livestock. Today we heard from the ministry different projects being presented, projects that are live to support this industry. And yesterday, from the ELGA side, so the side responsible for the financial aids from the Greek state, we heard them speaking about the aids and the amount that will be given for those who suffered because of the floods and other things. Well,
και ιδίως όσον αφορά αυτό το συγκεκριμένο το θέμα, σε αυτό το συγκεκριμένο θέμα, τι εισπράξατε
what did you get from all of those discussions and questions? Let's start with Thanasis.
Hello, indeed, in our panel, there was tense because there were livestock farmers and producers. We heard some strange things like the jealousy of the subsidies, which was told by Yannis, by Makamis. It was something ambiguous. He said it in a way I couldn't understand what he meant. That subsidies are those who keep us back, subsidies are those who, without any conditions, without control, are given to some producers. This has been told by many people. Me personally, as a journalist who travels throughout the whole Greece, I see this, I hear this every day. Ms. Kara has said this as well. She's a livestock farmer. She said, I have people next to me who do not have even any animals. They do not have any animals. I know cases. There was a livestock farmer next to me. On the papers, he says that he's 82 years old. Those who give him the money cannot see that this man is 82 years old. What does this man do? Ms. Kara said something very important. She's a livestock farmer from Trikala. We don't know where we are going. And I'm hearing this from many people, also at the newspaper and the magazines. Most people say this. We don't know where we are going. So, concerning what my colleague said, he was also in the panel, indeed, it seems that performance is the biggest problem of Greek agriculture. Performance. People do work. People do work. If you go and see the livestock farmers, they really work all day. Maybe they don't milk 250 animals like they used to do many years ago, but people do work. You want to invite them to Athens for 30 minutes and they think about it because you cannot leave the animals, not because the animals will die if they are not there for 5 hours, but they have to find someone to take care of them. They have to call and find someone. It's a big fuss. People do work and they work really hard, and they do not gain so much. I don't know people who only do this farming. They have other activities as well. Maybe they rent some houses, they have another supermarket, maybe their wife receives a pension. I do not know any livestock farmer to only live from this activity and have children to raise. Maybe you're a cattle breeder and livestock farmer in northern Greece. Mr. Kaimakakis is such a person. He's a cattle breeder. So, performance. People work, they really work hard, but they do not gain enough. I cannot understand this. I don't know how is this possible. I have asked so many people, they do not know themselves. So they do not have feed, animals die, then the price of the milk is rises. Some people say, for example, someone told me that he was invited in a big supermarket in Athens. He was so happy. He took 40, 50 kilos of feta to give it. And when he entered the supermarket office, they told him, if you cannot give us feta at 8 euros wholesale price, then please don't waste our time. He was crazy. For him, it costs 1.5 euros. Sheep milk costs 6 euro, and they ask him 8 euros just to discuss. And this man is telling me he went to Sial and he saw, as a cheesemaker, and those officials told him again, I know that you are doing an effort, you try to do export, okay? If you do not give me 10 euro per kilo, please do not waste my time. It was like a joke and they laughed. So people work hard, but they cannot gain enough. Thank you. So, now you give me the chance to ask Nikos Kokalakis. Unfortunately, he has to stand, but we have a relation. He's 20 years in the union, so he said, okay, you coordinated this panel today, which had to do with the entrepreneurship and the business world. We had representatives from the industry, supermarkets, consumers, and so on. So, from the supermarkets, we have heard some other things, that high prices derive from the high taxation, VAT, and there is no specific line in how this sector should proceed. Your conclusions? For this specific subject, the prices, I think we did not conclude to anything. The question that we asked the panel was which stage or which phase in the supply chain should contribute more to keep the prices stable. We had a disagreement between consumers and supermarket. We did not conclude to anything. But on this occasion, I'd like to put in the picture the subject of importing companies and more precisely, the subject of transfer pricing. We didn't touch upon it a lot, and we should give an explanation why the same product in a supermarket in Germany costs 60% more than in Greece, of the same company, of the same production. We understand there are transport fees, but there's something else which cannot be answered. I'd like to, concerning your first question, where are we going as where is the agricultural economy going and the European economy in general and Europe in general? In my opinion, it goes towards the perfect storm which comes from the other part of the Atlantic, and this is something we cannot recognize. We did not discuss it a lot. Some of us tried to challenge it. The green agenda will be reverted. This is certain. I'm sorry, but we have to say the truth. It will be. This will happen 100%, and we will have tolls as well. This is no good news, of course, especially for Europe. And since we talk about the need to adapt, we should find the way to adapt in this new reality, which is hard and unprecedented. But what should we do? Should we leave the green transition aside as Europe? No, I do not mean this. I mean Europe, in order to be at the front line of the green transition in a convincing way, then it should have the corresponding political weight. Does it have it? I don't know. But let's say something else. At the first panel, which was coordinated by Andreas Papagiannidis, Xenophon Kappas, it was a panel with the ambassadors and the responsible person for agricultural affairs in France for Mediterranean countries. There we had a first position in relation to where are we going after the new presidency in the USA when it comes to environment, and in some other panels, in panel 4 and 6, climate and environmental crisis, and 7, which was a transition to green and blue economy. There, a lot of things have been mentioned concerning the consequences which will come because of this. So, in the first panel, you coordinated Xenophon and Andonis. Those messages which were sent by two countries with high technology, I mean the ambassador of Israel, and also concerning a very big country of food production, of agri-food products. It was the ambassador of Brazil, and another country which will host the COP30 next year. Which are the main messages that we got? Xenophon, can you start? Yes, thank you. We had the advantage, if you will, not to talk about the Greek reality, but the messages we got are different and totally different to what we just heard about how things are going. Indeed, we see a protectionism in front of us, which is coming, doubts for a green transition, how this will proceed. But the messages we received were completely the opposite, and those came by all speakers, actually, and the French ambassador and the ambassador of Brazil and Israel. The basic message was exactly that. We have climate change, we have the increase of production costs, we have the instability, and no country now in the world is not strong and capable enough to face this on its own. And what is important is how far the dialogue, the agreement and the cooperation can help in order to find common solutions, in order to have real results. Otherwise, we cannot have real results. So, the basic question is how this, that is imperative to find a solution, is compatible with what we see now coming. Another important point. Now, the most successful schemes and solutions now come out of this synergy of the farmers, the producers, together with the academics and the state. Where we have this triple synergy, we see results, we see that the agricultural sector is strengthened, we see solutions to the problem, given to the problems. When this is not going well, we see the opposite result. The third important factor, which we usually leave aside, especially in the EU, but also more widely, the psychological factor, the farmers who work, we do not take them into account. We believe that decisions have been made here in the EU, in Brussels or in the UN, and since we have decided these things, then we can implement it the next day. But sometimes this does not work. We had many examples why this fails, but really it seems that even the sociologists and psychologists have a very important role to play in how the necessary changes will be transferred to the field in order for them to be implemented, because otherwise decisions are made but they are not implemented. I think especially in the EU we have a large experience about these failures. Also, I think it has been said by other people as well, the whole thing of the environmental protection is not a luxury or something which is just good to do. It's a need which needs to be compatible with the needs of the production, which are increasing. The needs for production are increasing, the population which is increasing, the demands of the consumers for cheap, qualitative food. This is a parameter in the equation. It's not a luxury, and we should have it. And also, something which was discussed a lot, it's a new reality of what we call food sovereignty. I'm not sure which is the translation in Greek, but I think this is a parameter which we should be taken seriously now, which is already taken seriously by all states. So it means within this instability, how am I going to secure that if something happens, my population will have the food that it needs to have? It's something different. We do not talk about going to the past to protect the production, but we talk about how we're going to create the suitable net so we can secure that we're not going to have instability and risks in my country if, for any reason, there is international upheaval or anything else, which is a very important parameter. I don't know how far we discussed this in Greece. We should add this parameter in the equation of the agricultural production and the creation of food networks. This is what I would consider the most important things. It has been a very important discussion. It showed us what is happening in the agricultural sector globally, but we have also seen what is happening nationally in Greece. Antonis, you? I think I understand that what has been said, but I think I'd like to step a little back and say that concerning the initial question, which type of agriculture do we want? Concerning the European community, which was present here through the French ambassador, my sense is that the honest answer is A, I wish we knew, and B, in order to answer, please tell me what day do you want it? What happened with the three consecutive crises showed, as Xenophon said, I would call it erosional concept of food sovereignty. Europe, the European community, started with two legs. The first one was not to have carbon and steel production, no, not to create weapons for war. And the second was the common agricultural policy for the population not to starve again. The French starved, but they also lost the war. But this concept of sovereignty, of the heavy food security, this would be the answer for me. It's something which starts to be in the discussion, but not in the lawmaking. This is the first one. Secondly, I'd like to add to what Xenophon said. For me, it was impressive how how all three said that instability and uncertainty will never leave. It's something stability in the agricultural sector. It's not something. It's something illusional, let's say. But the interdependence, as it has been said, people talk about deglobalization, but the dependence remains and will never leave the table. And perhaps it will become even more intense. There have been some good impressions. For example, it has been said that the technological scientific solutions can give a positive note, but the French and the Israeli told us that they admitted that when we transfer know-how, we should land to the needs and the level of development and how the population perceives this, where it is implemented. This, in another way, for me was very interesting, was said by the Brazilian superpower of the international trade of agri-food products. Brazil is the #1 country in production of coffee and orange juice, and second in poultry and cattle. It's a big power and a big country and a big developing country, and it's a country which 25% of the GDP is covered by agricultural production. And he reminded us that there are local populations, even in the Amazon, who have a know-how which is totally different from the know-how we know. This know-how should be saved, and to know the biodiversity and the way to face the challenges is precious. The French admitted this as well. He told us in agricultural production, we tend to forget that the center is the farmer. This farmer, the one farmer. I've heard this from a diplomat, so it was interesting. And lastly, which was already mentioned, we have this struggle, this fight against climate crisis, and at the same time, there is the ultimate need. Here we have the concept of competitiveness to maintain productivity to a high level, so we can have competitiveness. Otherwise, markets will close out of need and not because of the measures of Trump or anyone else. This, for me, was the interesting points, and in this session, and also in the eighth chapter, what it really boosted my interest as a journalist. Many subjects
για πολλά θέματα δεν δίνουν απαντήσεις.
There are no answers given to many things, but more questions come up, and I wish I knew which the conclusions are.
Και τούτων δοθέντων επειδή έβαλε στην
And given of what you said, and you also introduced the issues that have to do with the environment and the climate, Mr. Skouras and Mr. Christidis had during their third session, the third chapter, a very interesting approach, an approach that we saw today as well, the approach of net zero, what happened during the COP, and also the level of durability the financial markets, the insurance markets have, how those can be implicated, how they can help. What are your remarks, your conclusions? Michalis, would you like to start? Thank you, Yannis. I would like to congratulate you and Christina and of course the whole team for this great administrative work and you organizing this experiment, this successful experiment for the 7th consecutive time. I'm under the impression that a lot of interesting and important things have been heard during this project and this forum. And we might need, Yannis, to find a way to be able to listen from all of those things from other actors as well and to get the message out. I will make a real judgment for this conference. It was like a Scottish shower to me, because I was on the one hand disappointed on the level of the Greek agriculture that collided with the ambition that we are expecting many more things to come. We saw some young farmers, some young breeders, some businessmen that gave us that impression. I myself have my own experiences from the agricultural world for 60 years now. I was born and raised during my first 17 years in the cotton industry of Cotton Institute of Syndos, which is of course the miracle of the Greek cotton industry. And this miracle led to the amazing, of course, growth of the Greek textile industry. Of course, the cotton fields nowadays are useless, so to say, but the textile industry is doing great. Cotton still remains the first exported product of Greece and at primary level, so as we get it from the field. I heard that there have been very little active producers are now that are more than 57 years old. Young farmers tend to be around the big cities, the two big cities of Greece, or tend to flee the country. So where is the future of this industry? I believe it is for our own benefit that we convince them to come back or to start something new.
Ότι όλα αυτά που ακούσαμε με τους υπεύθυνους να είναι απόντες.
The bad thing also is that we heard all of this without anybody responsible being present.
AgriBusiness που θα διοργανώσεις
I believe that in the next, in the 8th forum that you will organize, Yannis, I believe that the conclusions we will make there will be a result of all of those things we said today, of all the proposals we made today. Michalis, thank you very much for your contribution. You've been part of the agribusiness conference. You've also chaired the Balkan Institute. You've been here since day one. And let me just say something for the wish you made. Maybe it reaches the right people. What we started 7 years ago, and today we reach all in all the 12th conference in Athens and in other cities. We heard earlier something about the trifold factor. So the solution, the digital transformation of the Greek agriculture on the basis of the farmer, the industry, the training and the education. That's what we've always been saying, we've been advocates for, we keep saying it. And I hope that when we in the future ask for somebody to come here and say something, then we ask them to come here and go through a panel of distinctive people and speakers and specialists so that we have a fruitful discussion. And for you, Dimitris, that you're not a diplomat yourself, let me hear your own statements. I would like to thank you as well for the kind invitation. And on our own chapter, as Mr. Christidis said, we moved across 2 levels. The one that Mr. Christidis talked earlier, and then the next one, the climate change and the environmental crisis from the agricultural sector. We tried to respond to 3 questions. First of all, is Greece a country that should focus more on mitigating, or that doesn't make any sense because we are a small country, part of the European Union, and the European Union only contributes to 7% of the emissions. And then, what about the story of investments, the development? Should we be part of this so that we can have a great future? Well, we had academics with us, and the professors told us we need more adaptation, we need to adapt. And that is something that we haven't yet done. But there are also many more challenges at the mitigation part as well. Mr. Reis told us about methane changes and how different solutions can be found through financial instruments. For adaptation, we saw 3 phases. First one being the direct response to an immediate climate disaster. one part, then we have responsible the insurance companies and the Greek Insurance Institute, ELGA. And those are the stakeholders that will help us stand on our feet the next day after a disaster happens. They will help us bounce back, so to say. That will show us how much ready is our economy to answer to something like this, and how quickly. Then, the adaptation and how our own agriculture will adapt on what's been happening and what will be happening with the new special plan, with new varieties, with new activities and research that is very much needed in this sector. Mr. Karamanidis told us that we are far behind compared to the rest of Europe. Then, about the transformation of agriculture, this long-term vision we should be having for climate change, I believe that we haven't done anything. We have not created a vision. But if we move to the next level that Mr. Christidis presented to us, the COP15 is responsible for biodiversity, and COP19 are there to face a single issue, the issue of finance. So this whole history with the meteorologists, the agronomists, and many more. But all of this leads and ends up with the finance experts. Where will we find more financial instruments? Where we will find more financing? There are many things that we haven't discussed: the carbon credits, the carbon market. We've seen the first directive for the carbon credit system. We see the creation of a market. We see the carbon procurement, which is already there. And this needs to be discussed. And I believe Mr. Licourezos, the representative of ELGA, said that he is ready to manage a fund if it's been created for this topic. This is very good news, of course. Thank you very much.
Πράγματα που ακούστηκαν στη συνεδρία την οποία συντόνισε η Αγγελική Καυγά μαζί με την Σιμέλα την Τουκτίδου.
Chapter that Mrs. Kavga and Ms. Tuktidou moderated. We heard that there is a huge issue with the culture of the farmers. We heard a lot of opinions about the dissemination of the know-how and how to transfer the knowledge. This is a wide panel that also covers the spectrum of the producers, of different people that are coming, for example, and cover the other areas, such as the Netherlands. Can you give us your statements and the remarks? Thank you very much for inviting me and for giving me the opportunity to moderate this panel with Simela. It was a very live discussion. We had farmers represented. We had companies and businesses that produce fertilizers and are there to stand for this sector and the farmers. As I understood, banks are not present to finance the plans of the farmers, and that is something that we understand last year as well during our last conference, during the last agribusiness conference, because the banks are not actually contributing, not helping the farmers evolve further. So, we've heard some things from the Deputy Minister. He seems to have a very clear vision, clear statements and positions, and he keeps his word, but he's only been there for a couple of months. And we are there we were there to listen to different things, but we didn't receive any responses to other issues. We didn't get any responses. So what we heard is how all of these news, the introduction of new technologies, and many more things have to do with the issue of how people understand it. For example, as it was said that if you talk to farmers about different technologies, they ask, how much does it cost? Who has it? And can I take a look of it? And when will I receive my money back from this investment? So, if we think about it, and for example, think of young people becoming professional, self-employed, the first thing they ask their accountant is, how much is this going to cost me? So it's the same for the farmers when they've been presented something new. The level of our farmers is low concerning their education and training, and yesterday we heard only 1% of them has undergone through school education, and I believe that the digital transformation and those things have a long way to go. So, Mr. Ευθυμιάδης and Mr. Ganas presented very vividly their points about those issues. And let me just close the subject with the paper from Florina. We heard that it initially is been sold 0.48 cents, but the consumer buys it for 5.80. And we also heard what the president of the supermarket organization said. Well, we heard him making very sincere questions, and he said that we have 8 supermarket chains with a number of different stores, and then 200 smaller supermarkets, again with a certain number of stores. Then how can we regulate those things? He posed very important questions, very interesting questions. Well, this is of no importance to the consumer, and we see that the effort that the farmer is making is not being understood and respected. So, all of this development will come from the small, medium enterprises and from all of those people who will support them financially.
Και εγώ σας ευχαριστώ. Και επειδή αυτά όλα είναι και λίγο
All these
σχετισμένα
are
με την
connected
λογική
with the logic
της ανάπτυξης
of development.
που έχει μπει αυτό το πράσινο και το μπει
We have this green and blue element now. It was a big subject in the 7th chapter, which was coordinated by Mr. Papatheodoru and Mr. Pelopios today, and these had the first messages of COP, which is completed today. It touched upon things which have to do with circular economy, and we have heard the proposals, the implemented proposals, how this can be done. We heard the professor from Israel. Your conclusions, George, let's start from you. Let's start with you. The speaker is not talking in the microphone. So, I have not been involved in the agricultural sector in the past. My basic sector is technology and economy and many others. First of all, Yannis, thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this forum. It was something different. It's the first time I'm in a conference which has to do with the agri-food sector. And theoretically, I was listening from the as I was young, that this is a primary sector in Greece, and we have farmers. I was listening to all of these. As Angeliki said, back then there was development, but I'm reading everywhere that there is a depression. This has been said at some point in the panel. And in Greece now, the agricultural sector, whatever I Google, the only thing I see is exactly the opposite what I believed all these years for the agricultural and livestock sector. We have talked about blue and green economy. This is an economy which, through circular economy, brings back to the human, to the farmer, to the resident of any region, money which have been spent. And I'm reading an article here, which was published recently from the Athens. You know this organization. The total production of the agricultural sector in Greece for 2023, together with agricultural services and the not separated secondary services, overexceeded 14 billion euros for 2023, and there was increase. The agricultural sector contributed 7.5% to the Greek GDP, but the real gross value, it says that it was decreased by 25%. It reached the lowest level ever recorded in our country. But this confirms the weakness to maximize the real value produced. This is a report. By reading some things, you come to a point and you say, in practice, this development of agricultural sector, green economy, blue economy, circular economy, the General Secretary referred as a strategic plan for CAP based on some concepts of sustainability, resilience of the agricultural sector, increase of competitiveness, improvement of farmers. I'm listening positive things, but in practice, I have heard the opposite from all speakers. In our country, the average age of a farmer is 57. You cannot expect something else. The Prime Minister says today, it is my first priority to create new jobs, especially for young people, and we brought back to the country 300,000 Greeks. This is what the Prime Minister said today. If this is true, then those 300,000 Greeks who came back should also work in the agricultural and agricultural sector and livestock sector. Also, unfortunately, concerning the issue of environment, things are not going well. I'm reading another article. This draft from 250 million from rich countries, and the title is "Another Lost Chance for the Environment." So, anyway, let's add the word hope for once again. Thank you, Panos. Let's now get in the water. As a professor, you work in oceanography, so let's see what is happening in the water. So, Yannis, thank you very much for the invitation. We didn't have the time to be here these 2 days all the time, but what I attended was very interesting. I'm someone who is getting bored very easily, take this into account. And it kept me really, because I think that now, the next forum, apart from agribusiness, you should add another small sector which will be called blue business, to add the professions that have to do with the sea and the value that they give. What is the link between marine and land environment? All the tendencies, international tendencies in the EU are to break this limit between land and see the systems in a holistic way. The problem that we have in the marine environment, which is obviously not in the land and in the livestock, is that marine environment has two characteristics which create a lack. The first one is that marine environment might be ill, but it doesn't bother anyone. On the contrary, when this happens to the land, then it bothers other environments. So the mechanism is not mobilized. The second one is that marine environment has an invisible side. Whatever happens in the land, we can see, we have direct access. But in the marine environment, we do not have this. Mrs. Alidis says that we might not even have it when we're in the land. So the thing is, this invisible side of the marine environment made the people who work in oceanography to be more advanced when it comes to new technologies. We have developed robotic systems, autonomous systems, submarine observatories which operate and transfer information. So, this is something which made us better. We have serious problems when it comes to our preparation for the adaptation to climate crisis concerning the marine environment. We have not prepared at all. We do not even touch this. Who is dealing seriously with the vulnerability of our coasts because of the change of the level of the sea due to the rise of temperature by 1 or 2 degrees until 2100? Who is dealing with the rise of temperature in Eastern Mediterranean, in the Aegean, with the so-called marine heat waves were created, where ecosystems are destroyed? No one. And the ecosystem, the marine ecosystem, and the fish populations are going to collapse. We are not prepared for this. We would not even talk about it. And what I see is that our transition to the blue economy is more difficult because, as a country, we are not being prepared in the last 2 decades. For example, there is a European directive, the Marine Spatial Planning,
δεν έχουμε κάνει τίποτα.
we have not done anything.
Και θα σας πω και μια
And I'm
μεγάλη
going to
αντίφαση.
tell you a
Στη
contrast.
θαλάσσια χωροταξία δεν έχουμε κάνει απολύτως.
In marine special planning, we have not done anything, but the last benchmark conference held in Athens, and we submitted 21 commitments as a country,
Προτείνουμε τη δημιουργία
we,
δύο θαλάσσιων
we
πάρκων.
suggest the creation of two marine parks, a huge park in the Ionian and a sea park in Aegean. Maximalistic approaches, maybe they're ambitious. How these approaches stand if we do not have marine special planning? The creation of these parks, maybe they will create other problems in other activities of the marine environment. We have not touched upon this. 2009, we had the introduction of marine strategy. We're trying to monitor this as a country to see if we could reach a good environmental status. It was ambitious, of course. We could go until 2030. No, something else about the culture of the country. The authority which controls MSFD in the marine environment is the Greek Center of Sea Research, of Marine Research, ELKEFE. How do you... There is how far has the country invested? We are a country, a marine country, and we discuss if we can create a new vessel. Now, let's go a step forward. Since 2007, we should have had one of the first priority habitats of our country, Posidonia oceanica. Since 2007, we should have done this, but we haven't done it. In 2019, we tried to collect any data available, and now with the program Vodafone Posidonia, the institution Vodafone, this summer the whole country heard about Posidonia. It's not a palm tree, it's a plant, and if this collapses, the whole marine ecosystem of the country will collapse. The ecosystemic services it provides, as I told you, is more than 200 millions. We have the blue carbon. Here is the blue carbon again. It absorbs carbon. We do not approach these things as a country. And another one step forward, the second priority habitat which we have to protect according to European directive is something we do not know. The Corralitza information. We have not mapped it. We're now trying to do it. We have not approached some subjects, and we are not ready to do our transition to the blue economy. I'm not going to go into other subjects. I'm not going to talk about fish farming and fishing. Those subjects are vast. We need hours and hours and many conferences for this. I'm not going to talk about the transportation and the pipelines and the cables and the offshore wind parks without having marine special planning. Which other activities of marine environment will create a problem? Why do we have a conflict? We do not have such a strategic planning in a marine country. Sometimes I feel it. I came from Antiparos Island now. I had a great time. Many times I was feeling that the whole country is at the coast, but we look towards the inland. But let's go to the sea. The whole world is separated into categories. To the optimistic, who say, don't whine, don't complain, this is the best we can do. And to the pessimists, for exactly the same reason, I am a pessimist.
Γιώργο μου, σε ευχαριστώ. παίρνω απλά
George, thank you very much. The motto about marine spatial planning, this was something which was discussed in the panel for the green and blue cities, and we said that everything should be decided should be long-lasting, and if a minister and a government changes, then things shouldn't change. And now we should conclude. I'd like. I haven't given the floor to Antonis, just 2 minutes. He can say something about the last chapter, which was about new technologies. It was the panel with David Lamb, Monica, the CEO from Israel, the Professor Nihas. Can you do a quick sum up? I'm listening. I'll try to be fast. Given that Nihas, who was a specialist, is not here, but I'm a journalist. This discussion about the advanced new technologies, which has AI in them as well, it's not something imaginative, it's something which is being implemented, it's going to be implemented, but it's something, for example, everyone knows that it's in the room, but it's not clear how it works. So it was interesting that we heard the expression to reinvent ourselves. This, for example, government, universities, smart money, they should operate differently in this matter and find different ways to approach it and open it towards people. I've also heard something else which was very interesting about enthusiastic approach. We are enthusiastic but also reserved at the same time. This should be absorbed and implemented by young people. Also, something else, apart from the previous panel, which had to do about resources and economy, the CEO of the Hellenic Investment Bank explained how the financial sector and her bank are trying, or they aim to operate online and to be accessible online only. They try to pressure the users to use this new technology. I found it interesting. Also, what was interesting was the Green Deal. All this experimental effort of the EU reflected the common will that in the environment, before Trump came, and before energy crisis came, it was a generalized demand of the people that something has to be done. If we see the case of promoted new technologies and AI and the need to introduce them to the discussion for a very traditional sectors such as the agriculture, then we see that in a way, which I cannot understand, but I'm a journalist, as I said, this policy and will should be translated in something into something that will be needed by the common people or the farmers and those involved in the supply chain. So for me, the last chapter was very interesting, but it was like the foam on the surface. Thank you very much, Antonis. Nikos, would you like to say something for 1 minute about this panel?
One question that we had to answer during this panel is how, in this challenging environment, very hard, difficult challenges, are businesses going to find the way to build and make their competitive advantage bigger. We find three things that are important: the adaptability, the will to cooperate and the readiness to cooperate, and the good mood and the goodwill to hire and implement new technologies like AI technologies. And of course, all of these go through the human factor. These are the prerequisites, of course. So right now, after having concluded since yesterday up until today 15 or 16 hours of conference here in person and online, I would like to thank you all for your precious contribution and your remarks to this year's forum. And you can remember we talked with each other, and this really changed compared to the previous versions of this conference. This year's forum was based mostly on dialogue, on two moderators for each chapter, moderators who both come from a different sector, so they can have different contributions and different discussing points. And I take this chance from what Mr. Papatheodorou said earlier from this blue sector, this blue addition to the AgriBusiness Forum. Some of us, and Mr. Bodegas and Mr. Zalidis and many more, we are members of the AgriBusiness Forum and the Executive Committee as well. We are there having discussions about the strategy, and we really need those people to move forward. And I would like to talk to you about two initiatives that are going to happen: a monthly bulletin that focuses on the issues of this industry, the farm-to-fork strategy, the geopolitical questions, and what's being discussed. And it hasn't taken shape yet, a hub that I will not disclose the name yet, but this will be a hub that will give us certain services, data, networking solutions, and many more. I would like to thank one more time Inter-American, the Athenian Brewery, the Syngenta, the Konstantakopoulos Institution, and the HBD Bank, the EPLO, the European Organization of Public Law, the Industry of Commerce and Industry. I would like to thank you all for your contribution, all the steering partners and the sponsors. Thank you all, you following this conference digitally and in person. I hope we see you again in 2025. Thank you.